Welcome to Mind Meets Body and Soul, a podcast that connects the dots between clinical mental health and spiritual holistic wellness. I'm Heather, a licensed clinical social worker and mental health guru.
And I'm Devon, a Reiki master, spiritual teacher, and lover of all things woo-woo. We're here to discuss various wellness topics, highlighting the connection between the mind, body, and soul.
We'll be offering nuggets of wisdom from each of our fields, with the ultimate goal of bridging the gap between our two worlds. Whether you lean more into cognitive psychology
or are guided by the ancient teachings of spirituality and energetics, our intention is to help you prioritize yourself and unlock a fresh perspective to healing, growth, and expansion. We're so excited you're here. Let's jump in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Mind Meets Body and Soul. Heather here, bringing in episode 49 with my lovely co-host, Devon. How are you?
Hi, Heather. I am doing well. Happy to be here for another recording. We had a cloudy, rainy day here in New Jersey where I am. So happy today to have some sunshine mixed with some clouds. How are you doing today?
I'm good. We're recording this episode like bright and early in the morning, which we're not used to. So it is nice to start my day having a conversation with you. So I'm happy to be here.
I'm right there with you. It is our 49th episode, which means we are making our way to what we're coining our golden 50th, which you pointed out to me happens to be on the same exact week of the 1 year anniversary of Mind Meets Body and Soul. So really excited. How synchronistic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, full synchronicity there. I think that wasn't lost on me for sure. And it's just kind of perfectly timed. It's really fun that we're approaching the year and our golden 50, as you've coined it. So I think it's all fun things and worthy of celebration.
I love how that worked out. And to preface, we have a special episode coming with a fun giveaway. Of course, in this podcast, we love to acknowledge and celebrate wins, big and small. And this one is a big win, a big milestone for us. And we love nothing more than celebrating with others. Gift giving love language, Heather has suggested that we send out a gift to a listener of ours on Mind Meets Body and Soul. So just a little sneak preview, not to get too ahead of myself here. We are at episode 49, coming back to Heather, your words of wisdom, I think 2 weeks ago, be where your feet are. So we'll be here now, right where our feet are for episode 49. What are we talking about today? I know that you have a story to share and you will be taking us from there.
I've been really trying to pay more attention and bring in conversations. And I wanted to bring in a conversation today about listening to your body and trusting your intuition and being able to even listen to your intuition and then trust it. I recently had a situation, nothing bad or urgent, but I was going to my regular doctor and I just wanted to check in on some things. I had some questions. So I scheduled an appointment for a consultation, figuring, okay, let me go to the medical professional, ask some questions, see what's going on. It was not a very helpful appointment. And let me just add my little disclaimer here that this is in no way me talking negatively of anyone in the medical profession. I think very highly of you, hence why I made the appointment with my doctor, because I think it's important to just trust the professionals. So I made this appointment, had a less than helpful experience. I was just asking some questions about what could be going on, and the doctor wasn't really very helpful about it, basically telling me that there's nothing wrong. What I've been hearing and researching isn't a thing. Don't trust the internet. Trust me. I'm the doctor. I'm like, that's fair. People come into me and they're like, I saw a TikTok about this therapy thing, and it always makes me giggle. So anyway, I still was I don't know. It just doesn't feel in my body like everything is functioning the way that it should and 100% accurate. So I started to go to acupuncture, and I am now a big fan of acupuncture. I'd never been before. And in the first appointment, the doctor was just asking me a lot of questions, trying to like gather a full assessment and kind of figure out why I was there and what we were looking to treat. I found that appointment to be really validating and very helpful. It could just be two different doctors with two different approaches to things, but even like on my way to the first appointment, I'm like running because of course I'm late because I'm late for everything all of the time, and that's just the way my life goes. I'm like running down the street to the appointment, and I'm like in my head beating myself up. I'm like, you're always late for everything, Heather. Like, get your shit together and like be on time. And I look up and there's a 222 on like the address, and like, I love my angel numbers. So I just wanted to bring a conversation in here because after that appointment for acupuncture, and since I've been going to acupuncture, I really do feel proud of myself for trusting my body and that like something was funky or wonky, and like now I'm feeling so much better. Like the doctor with the acupuncture, it was so validating and really helpful, and she was like, oh my gosh, yes, like you are so tired because you have no energy, and like very helpful. And I feel like because I went a non-traditional way but still trusted my body, it was something hard for me to do. You, Devon, and all of our listeners know I'm a rule follower. So when I went to the first doctor and she was like, nothing's wrong, don't be silly, I was like, oh, okay, like it must be a me thing. But then I just had this like feeling where I was like, no, like try something else, redirect. And I just want to speak to how we can listen to our body, how we can trust our body, and also trust our intuition. Because I think for someone like me who's so logical and like mind driven, like it can be really hard to like get out of that literal mindset and into like our body.
You bring up such an important topic of conversation, and I thank you for bringing in this share. I think of all the things I heard, 222 was like my, of course, my favorite, like ding, ding, ding. Like, yes, it's also a topic of conversation that I'll speak for us having been, grown up in the 90s, early 2000s. Like this was never a topic of conversation. And I don't know, maybe it extends beyond that as well, of listening to your body, listening to intuition. Because I know for me, I was always one seeking external validation. And of course, you have somebody in a position, whether that be doctor, teacher, healer, therapist, like in these positions of influence, right? And that can be really helpful. And at times, it can take away from the validity of your own intuition. We are all so uniquely wired. We all have such vastly different needs, preferences, body makeups. And so I'm really proud of you for listening to your body, listening to your intuition, and like deciding for yourself what felt good and what not. And again, like as you mentioned in the beginning, and I'll reiterate this too, like even though I'm coming from the more holistic field and standpoint, I'm by no means devaluing the medical professionals. I think personally, more than anything, it's about finding what feels good and feels right for you. So I would love to have this conversation on all things like listening to our body and tuning into our intuition, because one, our bodies have such inherent wisdom within. They are naturally built to self-heal themselves. And also our intuition is that fifth sense that, where we're like, I don't know why I know this, but I know it. And it can be really a really valuable piece for us to listen to.
Is it our sixth sense?
Did I say fifth sense?
Mm-hmm.
Sixth sense. Yeah. A little too early for.
Right. I
Yes.
wasn't 100% sure. I was like, maybe it is. I don't know. It is. I'm not done with my coffee, so I hear you.
Thank you. Yes. Our sixth sense.
It's hard because, like I said, I am like this rule follower. So I've been trying to do my own research and learn things. I love learning. I'm like a sponge and such a nerd when it comes to like learning different things. And I've been on this like reading different books about our bodies and how they function, especially like our bodies as women. And I remember sitting in the doctor's office the first time and feeling so like defeated. Like I just felt like I was a balloon and she popped it and I was just like like all like sad. And I'm like, okay, like it must be me. Like this is just I have a silly body or like something is going on or this is just how my body is. And then it kind of just felt like this like nagging voice almost in the back of my head that was like, I don't know, like maybe we should still think about this, like don't give up, like just so you know something's off. And it at first I kept like dismissing it. I was like, no, she said it's fine, no, we went to the doctor, no, we did what we should do. And then finally I was like, all right, let's try something else. Let's just see if maybe there's something else that we could try. And it still feels for my rule following tendencies good because I'm still seeing like a doctor and it's some I'm not just like googling what to do to help my body feel better. I'm like still going to like a trusted professional. It's just a different trusted professional. So I guess the question then that I have, and I just ironically had this conversation with one of my clients yesterday too, is like, how do we decipher if we're just like stuck on something? Like if it's just like my mind being like, no, like I want this, I want something to be a certain way versus like our intuition being like, hey, something's going on, like something's happening. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to be honest, I don't know if there's ever going to be like a 100% ability to decipher or to differentiate between the two. And I think it honestly comes with practice. The more that you lean into intuition, it's just like a muscle because it's just like a sense, like the more that you utilize that sense, especially if it's one that you have been so disconnected from. And I say you, but I mean anybody that's listening, especially if we have been so disconnected from using this sense, intuition. All of a sudden, now we're turning it on and we're like, how do I use this sense? And like, is it actually telling me the truth or not? When it comes to intuition, I actually think back to like us as children or just children in general and like how intuitive children are. Children know exactly what they want and don't want, before any type of like conditioning comes into place. When the moment that kids learn to say yes and no, like, after they get away from saying no to everything, like they really do know, yes, I want this. No, I don't want that. Especially if you have like adult role models or caretakers that allow for that autonomy and that choice to be made, kids are highly intuitive because they're also very much connected to their body. And so, like, a yes feels like a full yes for them, a full body yes. A no is going to feel like a full body no. But over time, then through conditioning, like we go to school, we start getting told like what's right, what's not, what we should be saying yes to, what we shouldn't, societal conditioning, and we start to lose that inherent sense of intuition and we start looking outside of ourselves to give us the right answers, right? Like, should I wear this? Should I go here? Am I in the right relationship? Did I pick the right school for myself? Am I in the right job? And like, we look to everything outside of ourselves to give us that external validation. And in doing so, we're disconnecting from this sixth sense that we have.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. It's making me think too a lot about like the eating disorder clients that I work with, because when we start changing our relationship with food and no longer using it to like nourish our body, we actually like lose touch or we disconnect from like our natural hunger and fullness cues. So like our body won't tell us, or we can't discern when we're truly hungry and when we're really full, because we just stop listening to it and we like get all wonky with our eating patterns. So even something like hunger and fullness are things that I think aren't necessarily like intuition, but our body does, it's so communicative with us. Like my mom, when she's full, when she's like literally not hungry anymore, she sneezes. And it's like the silliest thing, but that's her body's way of saying like, you're full. I break out in hives all the time just because like that's my body's way of telling me like something's not right or something's up. And like to me, my mom, for example, her sneezing has nothing to do with fullness, but we have to learn the language of our body and learn to understand like, okay, I know when I sneeze, like she had to make that correlation herself. And then she went to her doctor and she's like, is this a thing? And he was like, yeah, actually, like some people when they're full will sneeze. And I think we get so away from even just listening, let alone trusting our body and our intuition, that we do, like you said, have to start flexing that muscle of just like paying attention and noticing before we can even establish trusting. Like to me, trusting it seems almost like level 2 in this process.
I love what you said about us having to get to know the language of our body. Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that is so, so true. And like our body does speak this entire, language. It communicates with us every single moment of every single day. We just have to tune in. It's the same thing that we've talked about in terms of like spiritual awareness. Like all of this is happening around you. Life is happening around you. You just have to open your eyes and notice it. And it's the same thing with our bodies. We just have to notice our bodies. And I agree with you that trust is not going to be immediate, right? We can't just be like, okay, I'm going to trust my body. And then poof, we start trusting our body. We have to get to a place first where we are listening. We are hearing what our body is telling us. And then over time with practice, we begin to build a more trusting relationship with our body. The body will always tell the truth of what it is experiencing. That doesn't always mean that exactly what the body is saying is always valid, right? We talked about a couple weeks ago, our nervous system doesn't have eyes. It can't actually see what's going on around us. So maybe our body is feeling a threat and we're having some kind of bodily reaction. And then here's where it comes in the really important mental component of deciphering like, okay, is this a threat or is this not? So it's really a collaborative process between mind and body in any given moment.
Well, and I think like as you're talking, I'm thinking, well, duh, this is why we're having this whole podcast, right? Like we're literally here to talk about the mind, body, soul connection because we know that we can't just be a mind because that would be a wild, wild, wild world. But we also can't just be a body with a nervous system either. Like our body needs our mind to sometimes discern real threat from not threat, but our mind needs our body to like have the intuition and communicate with us and like be out living, because otherwise we're just thinking all the time. And we need our soul too. So like that's exactly why I think we are these multifaceted beings, because we can't just live too much in one or the other. We really need like that full combination of all three, which like is what makes us human.
Yeah. No surprise at all that this is a topic of conversation that is coming into this podcast. And yes, mind, body, and then the soul component of that too is like, people will talk about like, I feel this deep in my soul, something that feels right for me, something that doesn't. Like when, you feel drawn to a specific career or a specific person, like sometimes that is like your soul just being like, this is what we're meant for. This is what we deeply desire. And in my world, this is where we talk about the higher self, the all knowing, wise being within each one of us that does have all of the answers within. And by that, I don't mean we don't look to like professional support. However, it's exactly what you did in that medical consult where you walked away and you're like, this didn't feel good. This didn't ring true for my body, for my intuition. Maybe that was higher self Heather being like, let's listen to our body. Let's listen to ourselves, because at the end of the day, it's your body and it's your life. And you're the one who has to live with the decisions that are made.
Yeah. Poor My poor little higher self. Here I am being like, I had this nagging voice in the back of my head, and it's probably just my higher self, my soul being like, hello, listen to us. So I'm sorry, higher self and soul, you're not a nagging person. Okay, so I have a question for you. I started this conversation kind of using intuition and our body kind of synonymously. I know that they're different. In your perspective, Devon, is our intuition more of our soul? Is it more, because people talk about like their gut reaction and their gut feeling. And I know people talk about like gut brain and like all of this stuff. So would you say intuition is a blend of body and soul? Is it more soul? Does it lean more one way or the other?
I don't know if I have an exact answer to that. This is truly just my perception of intuition. So for those listening, take what resonates, leave what doesn't, of course. When it comes to intuition, I used to think that it was like just this like light bulb in your head that would go off and it would be like, ding, you know the answer. Ding, yes, ding, no. And I actually really like to turn to human design for the conversation around intuition. And in human design, it's called your inner authority. So I think
Mm.
intuition actually shows up in vastly different ways for each one of us. I know for me, if you're looking at my human design chart, there are, I can't remember exactly how many, like maybe 8 different inner authorities. And this is the way in which you make the most aligned decisions for yourself. So my inner authority is splenic, which is intuition. Like my inner authority is like just a knowing in my head, and I get it's immediate and it's fast. I can make a decision off the cuff, like I can make a decision pretty quickly. Whereas someone else, and I think this might be, was yours an emotional or was yours gut?
Yeah, authority, emotional, solar
Okay,
plexus.
perfect. With these different inner authorities, like this is your inner voice. This is your quote unquote intuition. And so, whereas mine's splenic, yours is emotional, which means that you best make your decisions not from an emotional high or an emotional low, but from a balanced state. So, in those moments where you're feeling highly emotional, you have to ride that wave, wait for it to settle, and then you make a decision. So, your decision making is going to be seemingly a little slower than mine because mine just goes, yes, no, not right now, never, like it's very definitive. And I know in any given moment, there's the emotional, which one's yours. For those who have the generator type, a lot of them have a trust your gut. So this is where you are tuning into your gut. Like when we think about where we make our decisions from, some people will be like, I do make it from my gut. I make it like it's in my head. It just like,
Mhm.
and it can be different for everybody, but where I know it, where I feel it is just like somewhere in my head. There are other ones, like I remember we had Cynthia for the human design conversation, and she was telling us that one of the inner authorities was talk it out. Some people need
Mm.
to hear themselves talk out a decision in order for that decision to be made. Knowing that yours is an emotional inner authority and that you have to not make a decision from an emotional high, but rather like a leveled place. Does that make sense for you?
It does. And I remember resonating with her the like talk it out piece too, but that probably helps me flush out the emotion so that I'm riding the wave while I'm talking it out. And then I get to the like neutral or like more level emotion and I can really make that like true decision then.
Mm-hmm. And something that I understand about emotional authorities as well is like when an opportunity or something is presented to yourself, like you may automatically have a feeling about it, but then you might experience a wave of emotions before you come to decide on what you, and oftentimes it was like the first thing that you heard in the beginning,
Mhm.
but you have to go through the process, like the wave of emotion. I don't know, maybe it's to like consider all pieces to it. Maybe you're experiencing some like fear and some doubt, but then ultimately when you find yourself leveled out, it's so funny. You talk often about the drawbridge, like the
Mhm.
drawbridge goes up, the draw when the drawbridge comes back down, that's like when you have ridden your emotional wave and you're able to make a decision from that point.
Right. Which I think the drawbridge to run with that for a minute, like the little minions on the emotional side, I'm not saying don't listen to them or that they're invalid. I'm just saying we also need the drawbridge to come back down so the logical side can come over and like discern what the emotional are trying to say without us being like reactive in that moment. So I do think it's interesting.
Exactly. Your emotional highs and emotional lows have a ton to offer you, just like anybody with, like, for mine, a splenic intuition and or authority. It's like if I'm getting a hard yes or a hard no, it's the invitation for me to get curious. Like, what is this hard no telling me? Or what is this hard yes telling me? So, anytime we begin to lean into our intuition, we begin to, start using that sixth sense of ours, pair with that curiosity of like, what is coming up for you in any given moment.
I don't know why. I mean, I guess I do, but this is making me think a lot. Like I have in my therapy office for when I see in-person clients, and also like I have a digital copy of my feelings wheel. And I love it because I think we have this tendency, like when we're trying to articulate an emotion, it's really hard, especially if we're in an emotion, like if we're emotional, it's just generally harder for us to like use our whole brain, whatever. Anyway, the point is, someone will come in and say, I'm feeling frustrated, or I'm angry, or I'm scared, or I'm sad. And I think we have this tendency to use these more simple words to try to describe a way more complicated experience. So I often will pull out my feelings wheel and one for them, and I'll have someone sit, and as a way to ride the wave, I'll say, okay, just start looking at all of the words on this wheel. There's tons of them, and just start like calling out words that resonate with you. And I think that resonating piece is almost like our intuition coming in. And instead of being frustrated, someone's often like, if we come in and we're saying like, I'm really frustrated with my partner, a lot of times the other things, the other words that speak to them are disappointed, or feeling like unheard or isolated or rejected or abandoned. And those are like, I call them the softer feelings that live behind the like harder exterior, more like angry pointed feeling. And I almost feel like that's kind of like our opportunity to try to like listen to our intuition, because nothing's happening in that moment other than this person looking at this like wheel of words, and they're saying like, okay, this resonates, or this feels good, or that feels good. And I think that like feels good is maybe a way to like tune in to the intuition. Does that sound right? Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
I think it's like what sounds, the visual that I just keep getting is like that light bulb that goes on. With intuition, it is that light bulb or that, flashing sign or that flag that's like, yep, this resonates. This is a yes. This is a no. And so I love that example that you brought in with your therapy. And I actually wanted to ask you as well, because we've had these conversations often about how we as therapists, healers, teachers, coaches, like we're always intentionally guiding our clients back to themselves, back to their own inner knowing, right? Like we are the professionals, but by no means are we saying like we know all and you need to listen to us. We offer them the safe space, the sounding board, the tips, tools, and strategies, but ultimately then they're going off and living their own life and implementing their own tools to become their own best self healer. So, what do you do? Because I know this is the work that you do as well. Like, how do you guide people back to their own intuition in your sessions?
I I think I try to check in a lot. Like, okay, if I say something, is this resonating? Does this make sense to you? And if it does, keep it. If it doesn't, just throw it away. Like, no hard feelings at all. And I try from the very beginning in building this relationship and establishing rapport with anyone. I am like the professional in the field. I'll say this, like I'm the professional in the field, but you're the expert on yourself. You've lived your whole life with yourself. You know yourself better than anyone can. So you help me help you by educating me on yourself and teaching me about you. And like I said, take what resonates and just toss what doesn't, because ultimately my goal is for you to no longer need me, and me have done the work to help you reconnect and listen to yourself and trust yourself and know all of the things that you need to live your like best life in a non-cliche way.
And as you're sharing that, it's something that I wish in the scenario that you're speaking about with the medical professional or just any professional, like I wish that they had offered you that same thing. Like research would show XYZ. Based on my expertise, I haven't seen this before. If you are feeling a certain way, if you're feeling like something is off, it would be worth it to explore. There's no harm in trying different things to find what works for you. Because based on what you're sharing about what you do with your clients, it's like you're putting the power back in them. Like you're offering them all of the support and like the knowledge that they're coming to you for, but ultimately you're empowering them to make their own decisions and to find what works for them, because that really is the most important. And imagine if we had that growing up. Like imagine if we weren't told what is right, what is wrong, what we have to do or what we can't do. And instead we were like given the facts and then also encouraged to form our own opinion and our own preferences.
I'm just imagining that. Like I'm just kind of thinking through that. It would be different. And I think that's interestingly like a lot of my clients were unlearning. Like the beginning of our work is unlearning and unconditioning, if you will, ourselves from all that we've been told, exposed to. And if things were different, like you're saying, we wouldn't have to start with the unconditioning. We could just be trusting. We could just be more in tune with things.
I'll tell you a funny story because this is what this brings up for me as we begin to wrap up. So, surprising no one, me in my woo-woo world over here, I used to love going to psychics. I started going to like random psychics in high school, and I just always wanted to know like what did my future hold? When I first got into a relationship, is this the right relationship for me? When there was turbulence in my relationship, tell me, is everything going to be okay? Am I in the right job? And it wasn't until I met my original Reiki healer, I don't know, like maybe 8, 9 years ago now, where in my ponderings and in my like throwing so many questions at her, am I here? Am I in the right place? Am I with the right person? She used to always tell me that I had all of the answers within, that I had everything I needed within. And that frustrated the hell out of me because I was like, what do you mean? I have all the answers within. I'm coming to you to tell me, am I with the right person? Tell me. And I think back to that. If I had listened to my body, if I had listened to my intuition, my answers would have been right there. Like either a yes or a no, or you have to release control. You have to figure out why it is that you don't trust yourself. And thinking back to that version of us, because we've all been there, we have to bring in a whole lot of compassion because we didn't know. You're not going to know what you don't know. We've been conditioned for so long to value the external validation. And so for every single person listening to this conversation right now, you are likely finding yourself in a place of deconditioning and coming back to listening to your own inner authority. And it's going to take time, trial and error, patience, and a whole lot of compassion and grace.
So, would you have a final tool, tip, thought, nugget of wisdom for anyone who is listening and might want to start or level up this practice?
We always talk about how awareness is like first step, key. And that would be my suggestion is like bringing that awareness, bringing that consciousness to where you find it difficult to make a decision for yourself. You know, like, are you the kind of person that will look at a menu at a restaurant and be like, I don't know what I want to eat? Or are you somebody that has to make a big decision on like signing a contract for something and like that decision is eating you alive, you know? And then my second piece to that too would be like maybe lean into something like human design. And again, if it resonates with you. It can offer a helpful blueprint for how you are energetically wired. Human design, you need to put in your birth information, time, place, date, and in there, you're going to look for that piece that says inner authority. And then read it and decide for yourself, does this resonate with me or does it not? Is this, when I think about it, how I actually best make my decisions? Maybe, maybe not. And from that awareness, then you can start playing with it and giving it a try. How about for you?
I'm going to kind of mirror what you're saying. My two would be pause and listen. I think sometimes we have being me, this tendency to just like go and do and like get into autopilot, put our head down, do the things. And we miss the opportunity to even tune in, to even pay attention. So for me, pausing allows me to just like almost put like little pins in things and pay attention and listen, like notice, tune in, gather the data, gather the information, and just like start to see what's going on. I think if we can become more of that observer, then we're able to like see things from a different perspective. And I think that can be helpful. So mine would be pause and listen.
I love that. And the moment that you said observer, like the light bulb went on in my head of like, yeah, that resonates with me.
Mm-hmm.
Great conversation. Thank you for bringing your personal share story in. I can't believe we've gone an entire 48 episodes without talking about intuition.
I feel like we do talk about it, but we just haven't like dove into it in this capacity. But it's one of those things, it's like grief and surrender that we just like talk about without directly talking about all of the time.
Very true.
Is it your turn this week to look up at your vision board? So why don't you take a look up at your vision board and see what is calling out to you, what your intuition is, what is speaking to your intuition today, I should say.
So I have a sticker that's actually on my laptop, and it says, never forget how wildly capable you are.
That's so cute.
It is cute. And it makes me think of this conversation on intuition and this sixth sense that we have. Like we have a whole nother sense that we can lean into that, that becomes talk about like superpowers. That can become our superpower, can help us make decisions more efficiently, can help us differentiate between like what is a yes for us, what is a no for us, or a not right now. So never forget how wildly capable you are, especially when you tune in to your intuition.
I love it. I love it. Love it. Never forget. And I think this was a pretty cool episode. So thank you for allowing me to bring in this conversation, for supporting it and bringing in all of the wisdom that you have to share. And we'll talk to everybody next week.
Yes, thank you. See you next week, everyone, for our golden 50th 1-year anniversary of Mind Meets Body and Soul.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. We are so glad that you took the time to share this space with us. We'll be releasing new episodes of Mind Meets Body and Soul every Tuesday, so be sure to give us a follow and share this podcast with those you love.
To connect with us and join our communities, head to the show notes where you'll find our contact information and individual websites. Until next week, stay grounded, keep growing, and trust that everything you seek is unfolding for you.